What would happen to someone if they were declared to be leprous under the law of Moses? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Leviticus on walking through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Leviticus chapter 13. We're going to be reading from verses 38 to 46. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Leviticus chapter 13, beginning verse 38. If a man or a woman has bright spots on the skin of the body, specifically white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and indeed if the bright spots on the skin of the body are dull white, it is a white spot that grows on the skin. He is clean. As for the man whose hair has fallen from his head, he is bald, but he is clean. He whose hair has fallen from his forehead, he is bald on the forehead, but he is clean. And if there is on the bald head or bald forehead a reddish white sore, it is leprosy breaking out on his bald head or his bald forehead. And the priest shall examine it, and indeed if the swelling of the sore is reddish white on his bald head or his bald forehead, as the appearance of leprosy on the skin of the body, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean, his sore is on his head. Now the leper on whom the sore is, his clothes shall be torn and his head bare, and he shall cover his mustache and cry, Unclean, unclean. He shall be unclean. All the days he has the sore, he shall be unclean. He is unclean, and he shall dwell alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. In this chapter, we've been dealing with uncleanness as it concerns leprosy. The leprosy being discussed is not necessarily what we would call leprosy today, but would certainly include that. What is called leprosy here is most of the time skin blemishes that have either become infected or appear contagious. Someone was going to be declared unclean if they had these. For if one was unclean, one couldn't sacrifice in the tabernacle and thus defile the holy things with what could be contagious disease. This designation was also made so as not to allow the spread of disease throughout the camp, causing an epidemic. The procedure when you had what could be described as a leprous sore was to go to the priest for examination. They were the only ones who could declare someone clean or unclean, so that is why they were chosen. In today's reading, we come to the last set of sores that would be covered under the leprosy regulations of the law. Now, to be sure, after we're done with this episode, we still have much more to talk about concerning leprosy before moving on to another topic, but we will at least be done with talking about sores. If someone had bright spots on the skin of the body, in this case, white bright spots, and the priest was to examine them, and if the spots were a dull white color, it is simply a white spot that grows on the skin. This would be clean. This shows us that these rules here were not meant to punish people for skin diseases or for having normal skin ailments, but for unique skin conditions that could be contagious or infected. A man whose hair had fallen out such that he is bald, he would be considered clean. I'm sure this would comfort anyone watching who may be going bald, for if you lived under the law of Moses, you weren't somehow unclean. Now, why would you have been mentioned as unclean as a possibility? Most likely due to the fact that losing one's hair naturally might have been seen as having some sort of disease. While disease might cause this, such disease also manifests itself in other ways, so simply going bald wasn't going to be the cause of someone being declared unclean. The same would be true of one whose hair had fallen from their forehead, meaning their eyebrows. They too were clean. But if someone is bald and what is revealed underneath is swelling from a sore that is reddish white as the appearance of anything that we've talked about thus far, then a man is a leprous man. He is unclean and will be pronounced such by the priest. So far we've talked about three types of people: clean people, isolated people, and unclean people. What happened with the clean people thus far has been pretty evident, and what happened with the isolated people has as well. But what happened if the priest declared you unclean? Would you be able to return home and just be careful so as not to come in contact with others? No. One was to tear his clothes and lay his head bare. This last part may make it seem that they were to shave their head, but that's not what is being discussed. What is meant here is that the hair was to be disheveled, meaning untidy or disordered. In other words, not combed or nicely taken care of. These would be the signs of mourning and would alert people that something is wrong. They were also to cover their mustache, and when someone walked by, they were to yell, Unclean, unclean, as a warning for someone not to approach them, lest they too become infected. All the days that the sores existed, they were unclean. They weren't to live at home, but they were to dwell outside the camp. This forced isolation hopefully would help their skin condition cure itself, but also prevent it from spreading. Having leprosy at that time was certainly a major inconvenience, and it could even be life-altering. But recall, this not only would prevent disease from spreading, but it was also a holiness issue. Under the law, physical holiness was necessary because of the physical sacrifices that were offered. If one was to approach God, they must be holy. And so, while this might seem harsh, it was necessary. We can just be thankful that we live under the law of Christ today, where spiritual holiness is what God desires, which is possible through His grace, which is received by obedient faith. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Leviticus 13, verses 47 to 52, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.